One question we always ask guests when they come on is about musical heroes, and I'm sure you've all got them. We've all had them when we were growing up, when we were teenagers, but a lot of us have been lucky to have met them and to have worked with them. I wonder which of you have met your musical heroes, and did they disappoint or did they meet your expectations?
I have two real heroes. One's a lady, so we'll call her a heroine. And neither of them were on my labels, unfortunately. Jackson Browne and Joni Mitchell, effectively. And they're the only artists where I've liked everything they've ever done. And they weren't on my labels. But there was one time where I was passing through an airport and I bumped into Jackson Browne. And I thought, I don't hate doing this, but I had to go over and say something to him. And I said, look, I know you don't know me from Adam. I'm not even going to try and introduce myself, but I love your music so much. I've got everything you ever recorded, even the bootlegs. And then I thought, I shouldn't have said that. And he said, oh, great, fantastic. And I said, I've even got a picture of me standing on a corner in Winslow, Arizona. And he said, yes, so have I. So I thought, that's great. And then this is a fantastic story. We had the Sundays at EMI, and I was living out in West Hollywood, and we had the Sundays were playing at the Pantages Theatre on Hollywood Boulevard. Now, we didn't have the Sundays for North America. They were with Griffin in North America, but I love jangly guitars, so I love their material. And Harriet and David are lovely, lovely people. So I went along to see them at the theatre. And it was like a stars night out. There was Tom Petty there was Stevie Nicks, there was Mick Fleetwood, of course. And we went backstage afterwards. And Harriet and David said, come, let's have a drink. And there was about 6 of us stood around, we were talking. And then I realised, and honestly, the honest truth, I didn't realise it was Joni Mitchell. And she was stood there with her then husband, Larry, the bass player. And at that time, I think she was going through a bit of illness because she looked very grey. And she had a mop cap on. I didn't recognise her at first. But she, isn't it disappointing when you meet your heroes and they're boring? She was away with the fucking fairies. She was mad as a box of frogs. She said to me, John, the end of the world must be close, because the Mayan Indians can no longer dance with snakes in their mouth. And I thought, fucking great, give me a pint of whatever Joni's drinking. And it was fantastic. She was away on another astral plane. And of course, I got out, I was skipping down Hollywood Boulevard, got back home, called on my friends and realised it was 3 a.m. I couldn't talk to anybody.
You want her to be like that. It was good that she was.
Absolutely. It would have been so boring if she talked to me about a new fridge.
Yeah. You reminded me about Jackson Browne, actually. My very good friend Paul Sexton, the music journalist, who really, I think, should do one of these with us one day. But he was asked, I think, by one of the Sunday papers to do a big piece on Jackson Browne the last time he had an album out. And he'd interviewed Jackson several times before and had his number. So he knew Jackson Browne was coming to London. And he said, can I do a piece with you? Can we grab an interview? And Jackson Browne said, yeah, of course, but I'm really busy. The only time I can see you is if you come with me, because I have to go to see my chiropodist in Bromley. It's rather peculiar that Jackson Browne has somebody that looks after his feet in Bromley, having come from America all the way to see a chiropodist in Bromley. And he said, the only time I've got is if you sit with me in the car and we can do the chat in the back of my limo on the way to the chiropodist in Bromley. So Paul did that. So he just sat in the car, did the interview. Jackson got out in Bromley or Beckenham or wherever it was, went to the chiropodist, and then Paul had to get the train back to Victoria. That's the only Jackson Browne story I know.
One of the last times I went to see him was at the Royal Albert Hall. And I didn't have a ticket, so I went and I bought a ticket off a tout outside. And to be honest, I didn't pay much over the odds, but I got in. There were quite decent seats. Sat next to me was Chris Briggs. So I said to Briggs, I said, Jackson's not one of your artists, is he? He said, no. He says, I'm here, same as you. We just love his music.
Robert Plant is, was a hero. And as a kid growing up in Kidderminster, my band was the sort of up-and-coming post-punk rowdy little gang that everybody all the kids in the area used to chase after. So he used to come and see us play. And John Bonham came along a few times as well and used to lend us equipment. And between the two of them, they were incredibly supportive of local talent. But one of the things that was always the rumour around the area was that Robert was the tightest git imaginable, and there were stories about him haggling for a block of cheddar in the local market with some poor old lady behind a barrow. And you know, that was the rumour that used to go around. And funny enough, Robbie Blunt, his guitarist, once told me that they were playing at the Albert Hall, and he turned up there to rehearse, and Robert said, "What are you wearing on your feet?" And he said, "Well, these are my shoes." And he said, "You can't wear those. You need proper stage boots. Go down to this shop on the King's Road. I've got an account there, and you can get them." So he went down there, and the guy serving in this boot shop on the King's Road was actually Danny, the lead singer of Paddy Goes to Holyhead. So there's a bit weird interaction there. But he said to Robbie, "Why do you want these boots? Because they're a bit flash." And he said, "Well, because I'm playing at the Albert Hall." He said, "Who are you playing with?" He said, "Robert Plant." He said, "Put it on his account." He said, "Yeah, you can have these. I'll charge him double." And used to be the norm. But the other side of it is that a few years ago, when Pat Moran, the record producer, died, who produced Robert's first two solo albums, I organised a sort of tribute fundraiser gig down near Rockfield Studios, where they'd worked and where they'd both lived for a while. And Robert came down and performed with us that night and was incredibly generous to me as a lead singer, but also incredibly generous in another way, because somehow or another, the only fundraising thing that happened was everyone passed a bucket around, and it was all the local people from the pub. So it wasn't as if there was going to be a lot of money in there, and somehow 8,000 quid turned up in that bucket that night.
God.
I have never heard anybody say who put it there, but I don't know who else could have afforded it.
Well, Robert Plant, of course, has had the old facelifts. He's had three, and the joke going round was he's had three facelifts, but it hasn't worked because you can still see it.
I haven't said anything of the sort. The man looks like a bag of spanners.
Bag of spanners. Chris Griffin, you worked at Virgin Christmas with me. Virgin, did you work with any people, any heroes?
Not really. I'm a bit like, with John and, talking about Joni Mitchell, I'm sort of quite glad I haven't met her. And there's quite a number of people like that. I do remember Marc Bolan, his last TV show was up at Granada Television. And this was the week before he unfortunately died in a car crash. And Bowie was on the same programme. The reason why I was there was that Generation X were coming up from London, and the little tossers had, left late and were very late. And Muriel Gray nearly chucked them off. I was using my best persuasive, actions to tell her that no, that they'll be here, and they did arrive. So that was sort of quite memorable. I suppose they were two of my sort of heroes, but again, I quite like the idea to keep people at distance. I've never met Neil Young. I haven't met Bruce Springsteen either, but those are people that I'd love to, perhaps have time with but it might spoil the illusion.
Well, it's funny because I think I was at Chrysalis with you when Blondie came over for the first time, and they had a single out, "Rip Her to Shreds," I think it was. And I was enamoured by Debbie Harry. I couldn't wait. And I think, Chris, you might have been there. They did a gig at the Greyhound pub or somewhere, just out on the motorway where it was. And I was just enamoured with her. And I was just in the second row, I think, and she spat at me. And it sort of ruined the illusion,
Did she hit you?
Yeah, right on the forehead.
Good shot.
Yeah, good shot. My heroes were always and still are the Incredible String Band, and the long and the short of it was, while very high on amphetamines one day, living in a house called Sausage, believe it or not, in Barnhurst in Kent, I sent them a letter that I loved them and all that. And the long and the short of it was, they invited me up to the Row in Edinburgh, and I mean, Robin Williamson of the Incredible String Band is God. There's no doubt about it. And I can remember now sitting in one of the cottages, and I saw him walk by like that, and I thought, oh my God, it's him. Oh no. And I didn't, and he just walked in and said, hello, how are you? And he just seemed like the man next door. And so it's one of those occasions, and when we became friends, so you become friends with your God. It's like taking Jesus out for a pint, you know. It's like kind of, what? But I was very fortunate. But on the other hand, if I'd met God and he turned out to be a toe rag, it would have ruined everything. So, Chris, I actually agree with you, to be honest. I think sometimes it's best not to meet them and just hold them there, you know.
I do have a story about Blondie because we were doing some promo in Birmingham when they were playing the Odeon, as was in New Street, when you'd actually drive up New Street. I was there in my Cortina, parked outside, and Debbie plus one of the boys were going to go to BRMB. They finished the rehearsal, and so we're going to leave, and they decided they were all going to come. And I said, well, I've only got a car for, 5 of us, and that's pushing it. Oh, we'll get in. And they did. 2 of the boys got in the front. The other 3 were in the back. Debbie was sort of had her knees up between the 2 back, 2 front seats. And so I arrive at BRMB thinking, for God's sake, the police, don't stop me. And of course, I walked into BRMB and the guy said, I told you Debbie plus 1. I said, it's all right. They just want to come and just see a different view. So we went up to the top of BRMB, which I think was on the 6th floor, and got them coffees, and they were happy as Larry. It was just one of those bizarre things. Needless to say, I organised transport for them going back.
I did a show with Debbie Harry once, and I was one of the stage managers. I was just standing to the side watching. And at the end of the set, she kind of looked over at me and she said, "You come here." I went, okay. So I walked over to her. She said, "Bend over." I went, okay, because you do anything she said. And then she kind of leant on my back and she took her shoe off, and then she leant on and took the other shoe off and gave me both shoes. And she said, "Hold these." I went, okay. She said, "Thank fuck for that. They were killing me. Follow me." So she trots off to the dressing room. I follow behind, holding her heels. She goes into the dressing room, snatches the shoes from me, and slams the door in my face. So that was my Debbie Harry experience.
Insulted by Debbie Harry. That's good. That's good.